Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome to AIMA's second edition of the National Leadership Conclave. May I request you all to please kindly be seated. The theme of this year's conclave is Breaking Through, Making India a Creative Superpower, which aims to explore the country's preparedness for the age of knowledge economy and identify ways to harness the intellectual and institutional resources to make India a global superpower. The conclave is being chaired by Mr. Sanjeev Goenka, past President AIMA and Chairman RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. India has a once-in-a-century opportunity of becoming a global economic leader, and provided it can turn its vast human resource into an innovation powerhouse. Creativity and technology are the key value creators in the new economy, and Indian enterprises need to build their intellectual capital to win the global race for disruptive products, technologies, and business models. India is seeking growth innovation in knowledge-intensive sectors such as IT, telecom, e-commerce, digital media, sports, and entertainment, and it needs to infuse greater creativity in the traditional sectors such as infrastructure, manufacturing, healthcare, and education. The government, industry, and investors need to work together to create an ecosystem that fosters creativity and innovation. All India Management Association has helped Indian enterprises adapt to changes through the past 6 decades, and it continues to be thought leader in bringing about change in leadership vision and strategies. It has set up the National Leadership Conclave as a platform for India's leaders from the government, business, and intelligentsia to deliberate on the most urgent issues facing the country today. The conclave aims to create a thought leadership platform which will bring together policymakers, both from the government and the opposition, key regulators, CEOs of leading companies, economic scholars, and management experts for a constructive dialogue on the way forward for the Indian economy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have a most distinguished lineup of speakers, dignitaries, and a very eminent audience here today. We shall start the program shortly, and before we do that, may I request you all to please put your mobile phones on silent mode to avoid distraction to our speakers and to the audience alike. Ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to inform you all that we will be conducting a live poll during the sessions. Please download the AIMA app to participate in the live polling during NLC. You can download AIMA mobile app from AIMA website www.aima.in homepage or from Google Play Store and iTunes Store. For those users who are not using Android and Apple phones, they can take part in the poll by clicking the direct polling link on AIMA website www.aima.in. Ladies and gentlemen, may I remind you that we are conducting a poll during the sessions. We would request you all to please download the AIMA mobile app to participate in the live polling during NLC. The user ID is NIC and the password is AIMA, that is AIMA. I would also request delegates to fill up the question slips, which are a part of your delegate kit, and please pass them on to the nearest volunteer. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all set to start the plenary session 1, Budgeting for Growth, Balancing Discipline and Stimulus. Getting on with the agenda for day 1, for the first session of the day, we already have with us on stage Mr. Sunil Munjal, Senior Vice President AIMA and Joint Managing Director Hero Motocorp Limited and Chairman Hero Corporate Services Private Limited. Mr. N.K. Singh, former member Rajya Sabha, Economist and Senior member BJP. Mr. Shubhashis Gangopadhyay, Managing Trustee and Research Director, India Development Foundation. Mr. Sudhir Jalan, Chairman Neo Foods Private Limited, and Ms. Supriya Shrinate, Chief Editor News at ET Now, the Economic Times channel, the Times of India Group. Ladies and gentlemen, the poll question for this session is, has the budget managed to provide growth stimulus while maintaining fiscal discipline? I request you all to please log on to the AIMA app or website to participate. This session would be moderated by Ms. Supriya Shrinate, Chief Editor News at ET Now, the Economic Times channel, the Times of India Group. Ms. Shrinate is a journalist with almost 14 years of experience in print and electronic media. A trusted face in Indian media, she is now the ET Now's policy editor and the channel's primetime anchor. She has interviewed key policymakers, corporates, opinion makers, and thought leaders, and as a journalist, she has broken many news stories. Her areas of expertise are political, policy, and business news. May I request Ms. Shrinate to please conduct the session.
Can you hear me? Yes, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, audience, for being here, and thank you, my panel. I was given to understand that we should just go headlong into the discussion, and that will make things lively, so I'm going to do just that. The topic that we're discussing today is budgeting for growth, balancing discipline and stimulus. 2 days after the budget, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritties of what has been done, but we must talk about the big picture and whether this budget does stimulate growth, and will it indeed create jobs, and will it indeed crowd in the private sector investment that has been elusive so far. So I will begin with Mr. Munjal right here on the panel. Thank you very much, Mr. Munjal, for being with us. The big question that everybody is asking is that given the circumstances, given the global gloom, given the economic realities in India, demand has been low, economy hasn't really picked up as warranted, yes, inflation is under control. What do you think this budget delivers?
First, I have to say, this budget has covered a very wide canvas. It's like a workman's budget. I looked at the recommendations that industry had been making over the last some months, and they've covered every single issue. They may not have gone as far as we had recommended in many of the cases, but they have covered all the areas. And I like that they broke this down into 9 pillars. Yesterday, the Revenue Secretary was asked this question: are you willing to put out the outcomes? Because in this budget, the finance minister also spoke of outcomes. Are you willing to put out the outcomes every quarter for the public to see? So you have a transparent set of targets which people can monitor. And he said, yes, we will. So the overall approach seems very sensible. They've covered the areas of the rural economy, agriculture, infrastructure, the whole host of the big issues. There are also a few things which were mentioned in single lines, but I think the impact of those needs to be understood. If you look at the issue, for example, of gas cylinders, connection of gas connections in rural areas, I think it's an absolutely tremendous move. One, it takes away the drudgery for millions, especially women, who do the cooking in most cases. It improves health. And the big impact, I think, will be on the environment, because what is being burnt in those stoves right now is actually wood. And deforestation is a serious issue for India. So in this manner, they've done 2 or 3 things which have a big multiplier effect overall on the economy, on the ecology, on the social structure. So I would say very good in terms of making long-term impact. There is, of course, some questions being asked whether the numbers can be balanced or not, because at the end of it, the finance minister said we will not allow the pre-announced fiscal deficit target to slip. And frankly, I was a bit surprised with that myself. But when you read the fine print, clearly they have raised revenues by raising taxes at the top end of the income bracket, making some of the products more expensive. While one could say, and it has been said, that it's a Bharat-focused budget, The reality of India, however, is if you see what's happened the last 10 years, especially for all consumer-facing businesses, the big growth has come, at least in percentage, from the growth of demand in the rural areas, except the last 2 years when the rural areas actually slowed down.
That's right.
So I think all in all, it's a budget which will help both the social system and the economic system.
That's a fair point indeed. A budget for Bharat means a budget for India actually eventually. Mr. Jalan, if I may get your opening remarks on the budget, and the question that I put forward to Mr. Munjal really was that does this budget spur investment? Is this going to boost demand? Will it create jobs? Many questions there, and one of the things that he highlighted was that for the first time in a budget we are actually seeing implementation being a pillar as well. What is your take on the questions that I raised though?
First of all, in 2 words, I would say it's boringly pleasant. The whole text was nothing to excite you about, but what has been delivered is so big and so efficiently done that will have a very long-term positive impact. On a lighter note, I would compare him with a cricketer. In the very first year, he was virtually settling down in the crease. Second year, he was feeling the turf. Now he's out to score runs. But he's not going to be Yuvraj Singh hitting big bang sixers. He will be like a Virat Kohli, who will score his fours and steal his singles, and yet score runs. Probably next year you will see the even bigger reforms. Right. And the fact that he could stick to the 3.5% fiscal deficit is the single biggest plus which I give to him. That shows that the economy is in control. He has confidence things will be under control. And yet, in the fine print, he has not promised the 3%. He has said he will have another commission to see what's the way forward. So I think, and the figures which he has look reasonably conservative and achievable.
Fair point indeed. You've raised a few questions there. Is the government confused about the fisc? And you know, the point that you raised, and Mr. Singh, I must ask you this. I was planning to come to you last, but because this question has been raised about the budget next year, do you believe this was his big chance to go in for the structural reforms that he has chosen not to go on? And this was perhaps his last chance, because we all know next year and the year after that, they will be closer to elections, there will be state assembly polls. You know more about political economy than the rest of us here on the panel do. You believe he's missed the chance to go in for the structural reforms that were warranted? He's ticked the boxes. Nobody's disallowing him that.
Supriya, I think that he has done an exceedingly credible balancing act. At the end of the day, budgets are about options, and options are about trust. I think we need to examine first, has he exercised the right options? In being able to balance the needs of India's rural economy, which although the contribution to the national GDP has come down significantly, continues to provide livelihood to 48 to 50% of the people in India. And if they had been starved of income on account of 2 successive droughts and the systemic neglect, an emphasis on irrigation, better farm practices, improving productivity of land, improving the reach of benefits to the agricultural sector, really has an impact which also affects the manufacturing sector. Sunil should have pointed out that the sale of the scooters and so on, which is being produced by Hero, has been down in the rural sector. A sale of a whole lot of other things like tractors and so on are down. So I think getting India's rural sector, making India's rural sector aspirational, once again, is a very major achievement. Second, your sharp question. Has he missed the big opportunity and the big moment? No, he has grasped it. He has grasped it because there are several features of important structural reforms which are embedded, which have been not written about sufficiently. Let me give you one example. Has he grasped a roadmap on recapitalization of banks? It's a major issue. He has. Not many people have focused that there is a sentence in that recapitalization that I'm willing to raise the 25,000 crore to whatever is needed for purposes of recapitalization. But if you look at the fine print, he says, in respect of IDBI, government recapitalization program can go below 50%. I think that's a very major signal that government recognizes that ownership and governance of banks are flip sides of two coins. I think it's a very major signal. The signal that the monetary and fiscal policy will act in tandem. Reference was made both by Sunil and by Sudhir about sticking to the roadmap on fiscal consolidation. It's a flip side of monetary policy. Monetary policy for the first time is now being embedded as an act of parliament. And I think that's a very, very major factor in being able to allow Mint Street and the North Block to act in far greater tandem and in far greater trust than they have ever operated in the past. One last point before I think he has created an enormous platform for vastly improved governance.